Well, if you're using gCADPlus on a Mac and you go File and New, you'll be presented with this template drawing dialog box. For the moment, we'll just pick default. That's gCADPlus's default area. If we use the distance tool and we measure from one side to the other, we get a value of 17305. It's about 17 or 18 meters across. Don't forget that you can zoom in and out, so it's not a fixed distance, but we set it up so that you have a reasonable amount of space for your first design. Let's imagine if you use the rectangle tool and you just say, I'm going to define a rectangle by a couple of points. One interesting thing you might like to try quite early on is to say, I'm going to go at a certain distance to the right in the X direction. So I'll go 12 meters, 12,000, and I'll go 7 meters in the Y, and we'll hit enter. And there is a rectangle that's drawn using a different coordinate system, and it's preceded, relative coordinate system preceded by the @ sign. And if we look in the properties box over here, we have a rectangle 12 meters by 7 meters. If we want to hatch it with some sort of hatch pattern, and we click draw and pick hatch, we'll be dropped into the base level, if you like, the home folder of gCADPlus, and there you'll find a series of hatch patterns. gCADPlus is based on AutoCAD, and if you were working in the US, you'd pick a hatch pattern developed by AutoCAD users and in the public domain called acad. If you were working in the metric environment, you'd choose acad.iso. If you're working in the metric environment and you're using gCADPlus, we would recommend that you would pick that gCADiso pattern. So if we open it now, up pops this dialog box, and if I use the down arrow, can you see here we have a whole series of hatch patterns that are available to us, and we can use, say, ANSI 131, which is just a diagonal, simple diagonal hatch pattern, and there are two ways to do it. You could pick the entity or pick a point. If we use pick a point, just click in here and gCADPlus radiates out and finds the boundary. Then when we hit the enter key, the only thing we have to watch for now is a density. I recommend starting and increase your spacing or decrease your spacing until you get you'll see the density changing as I change my values. So if we go to 10, 476, 100, 47, if I go to 1,000 we get 4.7. Now these don't mean anything in terms of the absolute spacing, but I always aim for a density of somewhere in the region of 4 to 10, and we go OK, and you can see we click on that hatch pattern and that really has gone in and factored 1,000, so we'll come down to 500 and maybe even 50, and we'll see what we get. See, there's a very fine hatch pattern. Now, as I said, it bears no relationship, the scale bears no relationship to the distance between these lines. So if I go click the distance, 159 millimeters. Remember, we're working in millimeters in the metric environment. So the hatch pattern file that you load with your copy of gCADPlus is important. You might want to, when your skill level improves a little bit, you might want to develop your own templates and make sure that the hatch pattern that you want to work with sits in there. Now let's delete that hatch pattern and try again. We'll draw hatch, and I'd like to demonstrate some of the different ones that are in here, different extra. There's a rubble wall, and let's just try that one. It may be too dense, but we need to, this time we'll pick the entity, and the entity being a rectangle, and then we'll say OK. Now here's the hatch pattern. It's far too dense. Let's drop it to 100. We've gone the wrong way, so we need to go to say 5,000. You can see how unfortunately these require some playing around. Now we do have on our downloads page a gCADPlus drawing that you can drag in and drop into this environment, and it has all the hatch patterns in it, and then you can just use the property painter to paint one hatch pattern into another area. So the key issue is when you are trying to hatch, you do need to pick up a genuine hatch pattern. You can go format and no, it's not there. It's, forgive me, it's hatch. And at this point here, you can, there's the file. You can click on the 3 double dots there and you can reload other files. And some people like to search the internet for different hatch pattern files. So there's a little introduction to hatch patterning in the Mac environment running under CrossOver.